Yo, how's it going? So, I just watched the Mayan. What were drugs like in Mayan culture, in ancient Mayan culture? Now I want to go to ancient Egypt. I stumbled down this rabbit hole, and I'm just gonna keep going.
Egypt and Mesopotamia were the forerunners of human civilization. These two places acted as the cradle of humanity and created the parameters of how to be a proper human for the world to follow. So when we talk about
That's
civilization,
cool.
what are the key components of beginning one? Well, you need agriculture, systematic
Yes.
residence to accommodate a large population,
Okay.
art and education to define culture, social boundaries and expectations, and last but not least, narcotics. Yes, narcotics. Welcome to Nutty History, and today we're going to tell you all about the use and abuse of narcotics in ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. Sit back and strap yourself in because this is going to be one trippy ride.
Yeah. Okay. The ancient Walter White and Jesse. That's what I'm saying.
About 12,000 years ago, humanity invented farming in the Fertile Crescent, an arc of highly fertile land from the Nile to the Tigris. Agriculture was most likely the first step towards civilization, and the second step was alcohol. As bizarre as it may sound, humans learn how to grow crops and they learn how to ferment them, creating a mind-altering substance out of them. For better or worse, psychoactive drugs have been an integral part of human culture and civilization from the beginning. But how did it begin? This was a peculiar mystery to the point that some archaeologists were in total denial of accepting the fact that eastern cradles of civilization, namely Mesopotamia, Egypt, Indus Valley, and China, were not as conservative as they once thought. In truth, these early civilized folks smoked anything they could lay their hands on. The first thing they smoked was most likely good old hemp. Thanks to nomads such as Yamnaya, everybody from Mesopotamia and Egypt to Greece and Rome got their hands on cannabis. Central Eurasia's
Interesting.
Yamnaya people were a group of livestock herders who occupied the Eurasian steppe north of the Black Sea and the Caucasus Mountains and now are considered one of the three key tribes that founded European civilization. Around 5 millennia ago, they moved eastward and brought cannabis along with them. They spread the growth and use of cannabis all throughout Eurasia. However, just like any drug baron, Yamnaya's history is full of violence as well. These nomads are the reason why Stonehenge today is a mystery. When Yamnaya arrived in Britain 5,000 years ago, they wiped out the entire peaceful population of farmers who were the
Oh my
original
God.
Britons and builders of Stonehenge. The same fate befell upon many other original Europeans who vanished after Yamnaya's arrival. Yamnayans traveled on horseback from place to place in Europe and South Asia, bringing them the good old Mary J. Moreover, digs in the Caucasus have uncovered braziers containing seeds and charred remains of cannabis dating to about 3000 BC and older. However, the conservative faction of archaeologists still are not convinced. Their biggest issue with Yamnayans being the OG dope dealers of the Stone Age is that the ancient texts are pretty much silent on the matter of using hallucinogenic substances for recreational purposes. But that doesn't dismiss the archaeological evidence found, nor does it strengthen the theory that hemp was strictly used for making only ropes.
That's great. Trade cannabis in Egypt and Mesopotamia. Okay.
Now let's talk about our Egyptians and Mesopotamians in more detail. Cannabis does have records of medical use in both Egypt and Mesopotamia. The only issue is that because these records are in a language and script that humans don't speak or read any longer for thousands of years, we don't have a clear understanding of how they referred to cannabis back in the day. Their records don't exactly say Mary Jane or 420. They use different names for their herbs. But there aren't many things that one can use to make brownies as well as a rope, right? Thankfully, a clay tablet from Assyrian times leaves very little to no debate about the medical use of cannabis. This tablet named a total of over 400 drugs, and a little detective work reveals that cannabis is shortlisted on it. Egyptians, on the other hand, offer much more concrete evidence of how fond they were of cannabis. Their detailed description of medical treatments in Ramesseum Papyrus and Ebers Papyrus depicted how popular cannabis was as a medical remedy. For glaucoma, cannabis was grounded with celery and left overnight. This preparation would then be used the following morning to wash the eyes of patients suffering from glaucoma, and it did work to a degree. Ebers Papyri recommended cannabis be grounded with honey to be used as feminine remedies. Interestingly, cannabis is now being explored for its potential to treat menstrual pain and discomfort, as well as endometriosis. Cannabis has shown its
That's
presence in a lot of old Egyptian
insane.
tombs and graves, including that of Pharaoh Ramses II, which proves that cannabis had an important role in Egyptian religion as well. Goddesses Seshat, the deity of wisdom, and Bastet, the feline goddess of war, had cannabis depicted in their lore and imagery. It was believed that this drug was also part of the profession of witchcraft. People also consume weed during certain rituals and festivities. This fact also indicates that if marijuana was a celebratory
Yeah, bro, let me get that Ramsey Kush real quick and some of that King Tut perp. Shit looks good.
drug, it is undeniable that Egyptians and Mesopotamians also consumed it recreationally.
Opium, a drug for ages.
For 8,000 years, opium was an ever-approved next-door medicine, a panacea for all maladies. Whether it be the Sumerian civilization, Egyptians, Chinese, Indians, Greeks, Romans, Arabs, medieval times, or the Renaissance era, opium was used for medicinal purposes, rituals, and of course, recreation all over the world. In our last video, we talked about how popular poppy capsules were in ancient Greece and Rome. We also mentioned how opium made its way from the East to Europe in the form of small flasks that even resemble the shape of poppy capsules. More excavations unearthed ancient ceramic pots with the nearly identical shape of the flask that were about 5 inches long. They were discovered in tombs and settlements throughout the Middle East, dating as far back as 1400 BC. However, the Mesopotamians were taking advantage of opium long before other civilizations. Some researchers do not doubt that Assyrians were aware of the plant's properties and knew exactly what its secrets were. Even the Assyrian name of the poppy was Hulgil, meaning happy plant. Long before Assyrians, Sumerians engraved tablets in 4000 BC to 3000 BC describing the collection of poppy juice in the morning and its use in the production of opium.
I mean, what opium is today is so different. That shit has a stranglehold on so many of Americans these days. It's sad to see, and we're prescribing it. It's a crazy flip. Sucks to see.
Jugs containing opium residue have also been found in Egyptian tombs, which is unsurprising given that the poppy was extensively cultivated in Egypt. In the classical era, the extract of the plant was known as opium thebaiacum, after the city of Wasid, which the Greeks knew as Thebes. Another version was named opium cyrenaicaum, a slightly different version of the plant grown to the west in Libya. The Egyptians cultivated opium thebaiacum in famous poppy seeds around 1300 BC. The opium trade flourished during the reign of Thutmose IV, Akhenaten, and King Tutankhamun. It was traded from Egypt by the Phoenicians and Minoans to destinations around the Mediterranean Sea, including Greece, Carthage, and Europe. By 1100 BC, opium was cultivated in Cyprus, where surgical quality knives were used to score the poppy pods, and opium was cultivated, traded, and smoked. Opium was also mentioned after the Persian conquest of Assyria and the Babylonian lands in the 6th century BC. The use of opium was generally restricted to priests, magicians, and warriors. Its invention is credited to Thoth, and it was said to have been given by Isis to Ra as a treatment for a headache. But that doesn't mean that opium wasn't for domestic use. In fact, it was the recommended way to deal with noisy, sleepless babies. Can't make your baby fall asleep? Just give them a draft of opium. Shockingly, this practice remained in use till the Victorian era in Europe. People in ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia ate opium instead of smoking it like a lot of people eat morphine today for a bad cough, aches, and pains.
Oh, interesting. Blue Lotus was not a slang.
Before Egypt was introduced to hemp or poppy, they had blue lotus. The stunningly beautiful flower growing along the banks of the Nile was perhaps the introduction to narcotics for ancient Egyptians. Also known as the sacred blue lily of the Nile, blue lotus has been revered by many ancient cultures and civilizations from ancient Egypt to the ancient Greeks, Tibetans, and more. Back in time, religion, magic, and medicine had very little distinction, as ancient Egyptians heavily believed that all parts of life were influenced and even controlled by divinity and the supernatural. The ancient Egyptians had many traditional uses and applications for blue lotus. The flowers of blue lotus were steeped in wine, which was then shared during religious ceremonies, rituals, and celebrations. Blue lotus was said to have the powers to connect one to the divine. It would induce higher states of being and consciousness. To give you a
Oh,
better
okay.
understanding, blue lotus taken in excessive quantities would create a super duper high. It would also induce a state of euphoria, make them feel relaxed with improved blood circulation, making it a potent aphrodisiac. The ancient Egyptians were liberal when referring to sexuality. The blue lotus helped them to create rituals and celebrations around sexuality. There are countless depictions of these famous celebrations, and blue lotus is a central symbol within each of them. Blue lotus is also mentioned in the Egyptian Book of the Dead as the lily which shines in the earth. Today, the blue lotus flower is used as a sleep aid and anxiety reliever, but has also been described as a mild stimulant. So, what do you think? Did Egyptians and Mesopotamians
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Like they use more opium and like, stress reliever type drugs, and the Mayans used psychedelics. And let's find out what other cultures used.